What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be breaking down the best and worst performances from college football in week number 13. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I make content like this damn near every single day. So hop on the hype train early. We're almost at 13K subscribers, which is awesome to see. I was kind of having that as my goal for the end of the year, and it looks like we might even be able to do it by the end of the month. So thank you guys so much for that. You guys have been amazing. It's good to see that we're back in prime draft season. So let's get into this because there's a lot of guys who I really want to talk about, and it was a really good week. So let's have a good time. Again, feel free to use the link tree, and then you can go over, look at all 22 clips over on my X page. You can even go and we have like a brand that we're partnering with, air quotes, and you guys get to watch some college tape. But make sure you tell them that I sent you, because then I can end up getting stuff for you guys. But regardless, let's get into this, starting out with our superstars of the week. Our all-stars of the week. Ashton Gillette, again. So he was on this last week. We're on it again. And by the way, yes, it is 10:30 Central Time. I've been working on the graphics all day, but it's okay. This is a series that I know that a lot of you guys love. And there's not that many of you guys who necessarily watch. It's probably my worst performing series, but the people who love it and the information that I get, I find to be worth it. So you guys are kind of like joining me on the research that happens that goes into these mock drafts. So thank you guys again for, making it so fun by being so interactive. But back to Ashton Gillette. He had an 85 defensive grade this week, 7 pressures, 3 defensive stops, including a couple sacks as well. This dude's been back-to-back weeks having a really, really good performance. Like all last year, he was doing well as well, but this year he's taken his pressure numbers up to even another level. So great job for him. He was a top, I believe he was a top defensive grade on his team as well. But, a team like the Titans would be a really good spot for him to go where, you can have that inside-outside versatility and just bring even more size to the table. And going on to our next guy, we have Pat Bryant. This guy has been mentioned before, but I thought that it's worth bringing him up because out of 12 targets, he caught 7 of them for 197 yards and a touchdown. There's some other guys who I think that probably could have been on this list, but Pat Bryant hands down carried his whole offense. And, I wanted to give him a shout out because we're going to be doing wide receivers eventually. It's a lot of guys. You guys saw I did a top 57 at the start of the year. We've had more guys to it, so you guys can tell that there's going to be a lot of reevaluation going on. We'll have to do that probably last, and then I probably won't do like a mid-season one and then a final year. I'll probably just do as like one giant wide receiver video. So, Pat Bryant, definitely, he's actually already been graded as well, but for a team like the Titans as well, they're back-to-back on this one, but it kind of makes sense, the team that could use somebody with the physical skills of Pat Bryant. Now let's talk about Marian Williams. That's what I love the most about this series. Like, you end up finding guys like Marian Williams that I necessarily wouldn't through, just standard tape evaluation. And, maybe I will never study Marian Williams, but at least now if his name starts popping up, which he does have an extra year of eligibility, so he doesn't have to come out, I at least kind of have a base understanding. Like, okay, yeah, back in week 13, he actually had a really, really good performance where he had an 85 defensive grade, was targeted 8 times, allowed only 3 receptions for 31 yards, but he had 2 interceptions and 2 pass breakups. So fantastic performance. I definitely like the versatility that he could bring to the table. Maybe a team like the Saints that love to just continue sprinkling into their secondary could be a good spot for him, but bottom line, just a name of a player that you'll never really hear with the mainstream consensus media. And at the same time, for the most part, there's just so many players in college every year. It can be very exhaustive. But hey, if this guy starts picking up some steam, we now have that name familiarity, and it's more like relearning rather than learning. Let's continue on. Devon Neil's an absolute stud this week, by the way. Good job for him, man. 37 carries, 207 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground, having 8 missed tackles forced. Including on top of that, he had 5 targets, 4 receptions for 80 yards, and another touchdown. So just so you guys know, 41 touches, 287 yards, 4 touchdowns. Devon Neil was single-handedly why Kansas was at least even competitive in their last match. And I actually get to see Devon Neil this Saturday because I'm actually going to see him live in Baylor down in Waco, Texas. So I'm super excited for that because, I I've been kind of dying to see Jalen Daniels, Devon Neil, Kobe Bryant, Melo Dodson up in person, and I'm going to have the blessed opportunity to do so. So super excited for that, not as a media member, but actually as a fan, which so far my best experience this year has been as a fan of when we ended up kicking Florida State's ass, SMU. But let's talk about Dorian Strong, and I ended up making a hour-and-a-half video breaking down 41 corners. Technically 42. I tossed Chavon Ravel in there, but I didn't have all 22 on him, so I wanted to at least give him credit without actually putting him in there, because transparency and integrity are big for me, and I'm not going to give someone a grade that I haven't watched all 22 this year. But that aside, I have Dorian Strong far higher than his teammate Mansur Delane, and for 99.9% of people that I've talked to, it's the exact opposite for them. But it started out the year that way with Dorian being above Mansur, and then actually the gap significantly increased. So for me, I ended up really loving the fact that this ended up happening here, where he ended up being targeted 7 times. He ended up only allowing 2 receptions for 9 yards and had 2 interceptions, as well as a pass breakup. So 3 different pass defense, if you would. And then he had an 87 defensive grade overall. So, I mean, really good job. A team like the Giants that might be wanting to play money ball with that second or third corner position. Definitely someone that you want to add into your rotation. I don't really think that with his athletic profile, he's going to be like an every down starter. I have him in that developmental tier. He was my corner 27, but Dorian was somebody that, even though he has that label of corner 27, it's something I really like. He's a player I actually have a lot of faith in. It's just not necessarily the same ceiling that you're going to find with a lot of other players. So I think Dorian Strong, if used properly, could be a legitimate weapon in the NFL. And I think this cornerback class is extremely underrated for that purpose. I mean, corner 27, I was talking about corner 36 in the light of I actually think this guy could work. So we are in a good corner class. Don't listen to the people who continue to try to lie to you and say that it's not. Because, I mean, you might not have the top end talent, but right now there's not many teams that are desperate for a corner 1. A lot of them are looking for that corner 2, corner 3 to solidify that rotation. And that's what this class specializes at. Then we're going to go to the rest of the group, starting out with our normal stars of the week. And actually there's going to be 2, spoiler alert right there, there's going to be 2 groups of stars, because I thought this week had a lot of really good performances. And you actually see somebody on here, Image, that you probably are like, what the hell? I mean, this guy lost, and we're talking about Ole Miss as being out of the playoff now, but I'll describe it in a second. So first off, we got Aaron Philo, quarterback for Georgia Tech. He ended up having 33 throws, 19 completions, 265 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. And you're like, the fuck? I mean, all right, like, cool. Like, that's definitely not a top, what in this case, 25 performance of the week. But he had 7 big-time throws and 1 turnover-worthy play. To me, that is absolutely incredible. Stack on top of that, 7 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown. So he actually at least did get a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. But to me, I care far more about big-time throws, and that's going to be also a hint as to why I still have Jackson Dart on this list. But big-time throws are super crucial to me, because just like a lot of touchdowns are manufactured and stuff. Like, being able to make big-time throws consistently is how you're going to be able to go to the next level and then continue to have that success, in my opinion. And I mean, honestly, I would love to look back at the stats and see the highest, the quarterbacks that are coming out, and then like the big time throw to turnover worthy play percentage, and see how that ends up panning out versus the top end quarterbacks. But I digress. Aaron Philo, I mean, 7 big time throws on 19 completions is absolutely fucking bonkers. So I got to give him credit where credit is due. Francisco Mauigoa has been on this list several times. This dude just super consistent there for Miami. 78 defensive grade, 2 defensive pressures, and 9 defensive stops. You guys know me. There's certain thresholds where I really end up highlighting certain players. And, for defensive stops, it's 6. For pressures, it's 5. So that's like the baseline where I'm looking for that base number for me to really consider you as a top 15 to 20 performance, or to 25 in this case, of the week, and 9 defensive stops. That's going to almost guarantee you to be on a list regardless of your other performance. But then you got Joe Marinaro, linebacker out of Boston College, performed even better than Donovan Azurewaku this week. He ended up having 2 defensive pressures, 3 defensive stops, was targeted 4 times, allowed 3 receptions for 36 yards, and had an interception and a pass breakup. So excellent job there for Marinaro. I didn't end up seeing him versus SMU, but he actually did come back from injury and play versus them. So, good to see that it was his third game this year, second game back from a long-term injury. But continuing on, we got Jay Higgins. Back-to-back-to-back linebackers is awesome. Seeing a little bit of love there. 82 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops, 0 completions allowed on 2 targets for an interception and a pass breakup. Jay Higgins was doing it all. And he's been doing it all. The problem is he's just not a great athlete. I don't know if that translates to the NFL, but I think his play this year has been even better than it was last year, and he did a very good job last year. D'Angelo Pons, back on the list again. This dude is like a freaking merchant for the stars of the week. But D'Angelo Pons had 73 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops. He was targeted 7 times, allowed 3 receptions for 24 yards, and had a pair of pass breakups as well. Again, just a really well-rounded performance, helping out in the run as well as the pass. Then we got Walter Nolan and Caleb Banks, back-to-back defensive interiors from the SEC. We got Walter Nolan first with 4 pressures and 7 defensive stops with a 70 defensive grade. I ended up watching that game. He ended up taking over. He is a legitimate force, and the fact that you're seeing 7 defensive stops as well. Walter Nolan is no longer just a pass rushing guru. Caleb Banks, another week of him being on here, and it's another week of him having 7 pressures. And then he also had 4 defensive stops with a 66 defensive grade. Great job for him. Jackson Dart, hello. That is going to be kind of the topic that I want to spend a little bit more time on. Jackson Dart here. He had 24 completions on 41 throws, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Technically, you could talk about 3 interceptions because one of them was called back and then one of them was like slightly dropped and then ended up being another one, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, he had 7 big-time throws and 3 turnover-worthy plays, 10 carries for 92 yards as well. The thing about Jackson Dart is he easily shouldn't have been included on this because his handling of the 2-minute drill was fucking atrocious. I mean, it was an embarrassment to Ole Miss, to himself, and you could see the look on his face. He got flustered and could not rebound. This is his first multi-interception game in the past 2 years, so, I mean, he's not someone who likes to put the ball in danger, but he also doesn't seem to be somebody who is in that game-winning situation, and when he is trying to reroute receivers and throw the ball before, and you could tell the preparation was not there. He was trying to make plays. The preparation was not there. The receivers weren't understanding what the hell he was doing. And that lies on both the receiver and the quarterback and also on the coach because those are situations in 2-minute drills where you need to be practicing that multiple times a week and practicing what happens. Hey, if it gets to this point and we see the coverage like this, you need to get comfortable drifting downfield. And it led to a lot of errant throws that Jackson Dart tried to make happen and should not have. He should have been a lot more reserved, and he ended up not doing that. So that's why he had 3 turnover-worthy plays. I think it might have been 4. I'm not sure if PFF ends up keeping in the plays that ended up not staying as official. But, I saw a lot of throws in there when I was watching that game, and I'm like, wow, he's actually doing a really damn good job. And you know what? He deserves a lot more credit. If you take out that 2-minute drill, I think he did a fantastic performance, would have been a star of the week. Some of those throws that he made had beautiful layering on them. And, I feel like that game made me second guess my dislike for him. And it's not a dislike. It's just, I prefer a lot of other quarterbacks over his overall play. But, Jackson Dart ended up proving with that 2-minute drill that it's not as rainbows and butterflies as his supporters like to say. And maybe there's a middle ground between the two, between where I'm at and where his fans are at. But Jackson Dart's still going to give him his credit, still going to give him his flowers. Jordan Latticoon, also someone who was listed on the cornerback video. He is a really, really good corner from Bowling Green. He ended up having a 71 defensive grade with the defensive stop, targeted 8 times, allowed 4 completions for 39 yards, and had a pass breakup on top of an interception. So Latticoon having a really, really solid week there for Bowling Green. It's nice finally to have someone else on Bowling Green to study. But Jordan Latticoon ended up being a top 20 cornerback for me. Spoiler alert. Feel free to go check it out. He is a really, really good player. And then we got Baron Morton here out of Texas Tech. He ended up throwing the ball 52 times, getting 37 completions for 401 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception, 7 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Good job for Baron Morton there. He was on this list at the start of the year, but the Abilene Christian quarterback, I think, had 9 big-time throws. It was absolutely insane. But continuing on with that, we ended up having kind of like two lists here because I didn't really want to. I was already at like 25 or 27, I think, when I started out. And I'm like, I'm not going to narrow this down to 15. Like, I'm sorry. I want to give guys their credit. Travis Hunter, starting out, I ended up labeling him as a weapon because he did well on both sides of the ball. He was targeted twice, allowed 0 receptions, and got a pass breakup on defense. On offense, he had 9 targets, 8 completions, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, he had that pass breakup that I didn't try to, like, it ended up coming off as me shitting on Travis Hunter, which then a bunch of people started liking, which it's like, it is what it is. But people were hyping up his pass breakup that was on a drag route. That was a poorly thrown ball. Could have been an easy completion if the quarterback threw with proper timing, Jalen Daniels. And Jalen, with his timing, certainly has suffered. I mean, like, that's one of the issues I had with Jalen Daniels, speaking of that quarterback video. But for Travis Hunter, it's not that I wanted to downgrade what he did. It's the fact that they're talking about simple coverage that didn't really require very much skill, in my opinion. Like, you're just staying in the hip pocket, and it was like a good lunge at the ball for the pass breakup. It wasn't the coverage that was phenomenal. It was the pass breakup itself. And they were talking about how the coverage was just spot on. It was beautiful. And it was like, guys, stop gassing up the reps. That Travis doesn't need to be gassed up. He needs to be gassed up on the specific plays where, he ends up lurking shit in zone coverage. Nobody really ends up hyping up those plays remotely similarly to the way that one drag route was hyped up. So that's where I was trying to come out with that. It's like Travis Hunter has a lot better reps. So why are we glazing him for this? So maybe I'm in the wrong there, but I personally like to not get prospect fatigue by hyping up plays that shouldn't be hyped up, because that's just usually what happens to me. Noel Williams is next. He was, speaking of that corner, I ended up telling you guys, like, corner 36. I ended up starting to believe in him. Noel Williams, and shout out to the defensive coordinator on Cal, or maybe the DB's coach who's talking to the defensive coordinator. I saw in my study when I was watching Noel Williams, I was saying, like, hey, man, this guy is really good in press coverage, and he seems to have an issue with in-breaking routes. Shade him inside. And instantly after I said that, they shaded him inside for the rest of the game, and he was fucking locked down. So, like, that was super duper exciting for me. And Cal, I really trust their defensive coordinator because of that. I mean, I see so many teams, so many. I'm talking about Ohio State. I will throw as much shade at Ohio State's defensive coordinator as possible. I mean, straight up, the misuse of Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun is absolute bullshit. Like, I'll just call it out right now. Like, they straight up put them in the worst situations possible, and like off-man coverage when they both struggle with acceleration. They both don't necessarily have that remotely as a strength, and both of them are far better in other coverages, but we're just going to use these guys because they're good enough to be able to run my scheme. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, all disrespect right there. Like, you are destroying 2 really, really good corners. And you know what? That just means how much more I love this Cal DC or DB coach, whoever the hell is controlling that. Great job for them, because they're maximizing Noel Williams, because he ended up having 81 defensive grade, 3 defensive stops, targeted 6 times, and allowed 3 receptions for 24 yards. On those 3 other throws, he had all 3 pass breakups. And that's what Noel Williams is so good at. He's a solid athlete who's really strong in press coverage, and they use him properly. And I could tell when he was being used improperly, they adjusted. So this is more so a really big shout out to what Cal is doing there, and that's why they're so consistent. And I actually will also somehow be seeing at least a portion of the Cal versus SMU game. I will literally be watching the morning game of, it's 11 Central Time, the morning game of Baylor versus Kansas, and I will be back to at least watch a portion or the majority of Cal versus SMU. So I'm super excited for that. That's going to be super awesome to see Noel Williams in person. But continuing on, we got Colin Simmons out of Texas, 88 defensive grades, 6 pressures, 2 defensive stops, and on top of that, he had a forced fumble. This dude's an absolute super stud. I'm super excited for him to come out in a couple years. Then you got Keaton Thomas, a linebacker out of Baylor. Baylor guys keep popping up on this list. I don't know what's up. And it's like usually, apart from the running backs, Pendergrass and Washington, it's always different dudes every week. So shout out to the coaching as well. Talking about Cal's coaching, Baylor, they're not just having one dude consistently perform well. Like, they're putting a lot of different players. They had a defensive interior and a corner. And they also had another corner this week that I didn't mention before that was supposed to be on this list. He was one of the 27. He was one of the 2, actually, that I ended up kicking off because I thought some other guys had better performances. But Keaton Thomas, fantastic performance there. 6 pressures, 5 stops, 2 targets, 1 reception for -1 yards. A really well-balanced performance. Jeremiah Wilson is next, cornerback out of Houston. That's who Baylor was playing. He had a 91 defensive grade, targeted 3 times, allowed 1 reception for 10 yards, and on those 2 other throws, both were interceptions. So great performance there. Again, 91 defensive grade, well earned. That's a consistency basis, not just based on solely big plays. Jaden Higgins is next. You guys know how much I love Jaden Higgins. He's my wide receiver 1 coming into the year. I have a strong feeling he might end up rebounding to be my wide receiver 1 when it's all said and done, but you guys know I just am a big sucker for Jaden Higgins. So he was targeted 13 times. He caught 9 balls for 155 yards and a touchdown. The kicker is there was 282 team yards, which if you do the math, that's like 55% of all passing yards ended up going to Jaden Higgins. And so shout out to him, man. Fantastic player. Doesn't get enough love. And I think he's starting to get to the point where he's getting proper hype and proper love because people are starting to see him as that earlier to mid day 2 guy. And I have him right there as an early day 2 to late day 1 type of receiver, which I'm super excited for. Jacob Parrish is next. Speaking of another dude who just ended up popping up on the DB list, I ended up watching him literally the night before. I ended up making it, and I mean, this dude's an absolute freak. As long as, like, there's only issues he's 5'10", and he is a little bit stiff, but he's also a pretty big guy at 5'10". But he had a 78 defensive grade. He had a defensive stop. He was targeted 10 times, allowed 4 receptions for 31 yards, and had also, just like Noah Williams, 3 pass breakups. So good performance there from a very underrated dark horse corner that could end up being a really, really good get. And then we have 3 Duke guys ending off this list. We got Ryan Smith, Cam Bergeron, as well as Eli Pancol. So Ryan Smith had 6 pressures, 3 defensive stops, and a 76 defensive grade. Cam Bergeron ended up having 4 pressures and 7 defensive stops with 1 target, 1 reception, and 7 yards allowed. Really well balanced right there. And then Eli ended up having 9 targets with 5 receptions for 188 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a lot better than what I did with Pat Bryant, but Pat Bryant's more of like a known commodity. Eli, I haven't seen this from him before, and if it ends up being a little bit more commonplace, cool. But I'm not going to say who it was versus because they're going to be our dud of the week, and that's Mansur Delane. So it's funny because Dorian Strong was a all-star of the week. This is going to be an all-dud of the week. Mansur Delane had a 48 defensive grade this week. He had 10 targets his way, allowed 5 receptions for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns, excuse me. So bottom line, 152 and 2 of the 188 and 3 are due to Mansur Delane's inefficiency. So I will say I did not like Mansur Delane. I'm not going to call this like a victory in any way, shape, or form because corners just have bad days. But Mansur struggled in the first week. He had, I believe, an over 100-yard game that he allowed. Like, he has really bad games, and people tear him apart. I think he needs to sit and develop with somebody who can maximize his skills because he does have some really good flashes here and there. But the cornerback position is not one of flashes. It's not. It's a position of consistency. It's a position of intelligence. And, that's something that, flashes are cool, but flashes get you put on a practice squad until you become consistent with them. And then you could end up actually being regular, because the moment that you are inconsistent and you have one off rep, that could be a touchdown. And that's exactly what happens with Mansur Delane. It's not saying he's a bad corner. It's just saying how inconsistent he could be and the ramifications of being inconsistent. So then we got Curtis Rourke, and that's next. I'm not going to necessarily blame the full loss on him by any means. I mean, he had a couple nice throws in there, but the problem is the dude didn't even get over 70 yards. He had 18 throws, 8 completions for 68 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. Bottom line, I mean, there's still a lot of the past that I've liked about Curtis Rourke. I'm a big fan of the Rourke family as well. I actually watch their quarterback coach, and he shows Curtis Rourke's development as well as his other brother. I think it's Nathan Rourke. Like, shows their development, so good mechanics and everything. But when you're talking shit the whole week and you're going up against a juggernaut like Ohio State and you can't throw 100 yards, brother, like, what are you doing? Like, what are y'all doing? And I know that it was not solely his fault they lost. Like, not even remotely close. But I know that there's some guys on defense who pulled their weight. You cannot say with a confidence face that Curtis Rourke pulled his weight. And so, yeah, it was his biggest test of the year. It's what people were really looking forward to seeing him, truly shine against top defensive backs, top defensive line, top linebackers as well. And so we're going to leave it there. But continuing on, let's talk about the rest of the duds of the week. We got Xavier Nwankpa, 58 defensive grade, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 20 yards, and 2 touchdowns allowed. So it wasn't great. He looks a bit slower than he did last year. He's one of the guys who's still listed in my top 32, and I was really hoping that he'd have that year, but that's only solely because his grade is preseason. So DBs are being updated as time goes on. A lot of guys from the corner list are already in there, so it's going to be a fun defensive back list. Judkins is next. And this dude's just been not doing well at all. I ended up watching the game versus Indiana, and he was by far the most underwhelming player. Travion Henderson has kind of like blown past him, unfortunately. And you guys know how much I love Quinshon Judkins. But, Quinshon has just not been himself. And I'm sorry, you can try to bring up the hand injury all you want. That doesn't stop his legs. That doesn't stop his mind. And, he's averaging like legitimately sub 3 yards per carry in college over the past like 5 weeks. So I just definitely don't like that at all. I mean, when you're talking about this guy genuinely barely over 2 yards per carry and 0 missed tackles forced, like at the very minimum, hey, you have 14 carries for 36 yards. You made 4 guys miss. The offensive line might be doing you some dirty, but you're not doing anything. And I saw him get a couple touches as well. And it's just like, it's not the Quinshon I knew. And it's just weird. It's really weird to see that, freshman Quinshon Judkins was a stud. Sophomore Quinshon Judkins was kind of weirdly off. And then all of a sudden, junior Quinshon Judkins had a great start, and then he's like back to being kind of ass. I think he should stay. I genuinely think that he needs to somehow like rehab and get back to where he was earlier on. And he still has a lot of hope. It's just, we're talking about something's wrong, and we are not, at least I am not fully aware of what the hell's going on, but it's far more than just a little boo-boo to the hand. Then we're going to talk about Juice Wells. This guy's been on this list a billion times now, and I love Juice Wells back at South Carolina, but having 6 targets, getting 1 reception for 25 yards, and having a couple of drops is just a no-no for me. This dude's been extremely unproductive, unreliable, and has multiple drops on the year that are bad drops. They're not just like, like he should have caught that, but, it was contested, so he didn't. No, we're talking about like legitimate. I saw on a freaking bubble screen, not this week, but a couple weeks ago, saw him just drop his only legitimate target. And I'm just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I mean, like, dude, just help a guy out. Like, straight up, I want him to succeed. And he just continues to be absolute ass week in and week out. Logan Brown's next. He's a legitimate tackle candidate that is on my watch list. And, another player that I'm going to be able to get to see. And I'm going to see how he bounces back, because he had a 4.0 pass blocking grade. Allowed 2 pressures as well. So it's not necessarily weighted in the pressures, weighted in the consistency. And, 4.0 pass blocking grade is not good. Unless you're Donovan Jackson, I'm not really going to give you much of a leash for that. And so I definitely am not a huge fan of that. Houston doesn't have the elite edge rushers. It's not like he's going up against Abdul Carter like Donovan Jackson did. And Donovan Jackson was a guard who's playing his first game at tackle. So, again, I want to put that out there that, the only person I'll ever give like that type of leash to is Donovan Jackson, who was a dud of the week, but I still ended up like not dropping him. It was just like, hey, if this continues, then it's an issue. Logan Brown, I mean, I've ended up highlighting him quite a few times, and I'm hoping he bounces back. But then you got Jaden Ott as well. This guy's literally the bane of my existence. This dude straight up single-handedly is losing me $12,000. I mean, I ended up like putting, I don't know what I put down on it. It was probably like $10 or, $100. Who knows? Shout out to UnderDog Fantasy. You guys get to see me. I post every single time I make a bet, which is pretty much weekly at this point. And I have won 1.5 bets because one of them got refunded to me because somebody got hurt. I suck at sports betting, or it's not sports betting, but I suck at daily fantasy. But it's a site that I actually really enjoy. It has actually a really good layout, and it actually has good prop bets as well. I'm just not very good at it, right? And so, they end up helping me out with being able to create content for you guys on there. But I honestly really love the platform. They take care of me. They take care of you guys. And if you guys want to get involved with that, which a lot more states allow daily fantasy sites than sports books, like New York, you can do that. So feel free to go look up and do it yourself. Make sure you play legally. But for Texas, I can't play with sports books, but I can do it on that, which is super awesome. So it is that top link in the link tree in case you guys want to do that. But Jay Not single-handedly is absolutely ramming me in the ass. Like, no diddy. It's just like, you got to be fucking kidding me. 10 carries, 17 yards, 0 missed tackles forced. This dude was like an absolute juggernaut last year. People had him in their like top 5 running backs starting out. I didn't, but like, who gives a shit what? Like, I didn't fully believe in him, but I believed in the production. Like, who the hell else is going to run for Cal? Apparently, this Mendoza guy is doing really well. So, we're going to get to see Jaden in person. Again, hopefully, I'm going to be able to like get to have some good eyes on him, which I will. I mean, hopefully he doesn't end up having a fucking ass game. I want him to have a good game versus SMU. Don't beat us, but still want to check it out. And then we got Quinn Ewers next. 20 throws, 31 throws, 20 completions, 191 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You're like, why is this on the bad list? 1 big time throw is 1 turnover worthy play. And you're like, still don't know why he's on this. But he had 4 carries for -4 yards. You can probably assume that there's going to be some sort of sack integration into that. But here's the kicker: 3 forced fumbles. There wasn't a ton of guys who had shitty games this week, but 3 forced fumbles. I'm gonna call you out, dude. You gotta have good ball security, and lucky that Texas was playing against a pretty much bum team. But just you gotta do better than that. Gotta do better than that. Then you got Jalen Milroe. First off, you put up 3 points versus Oklahoma. That alone should get you on this list. But let's analyze what happened. 26 throws, 12 completions, 162 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now, I'm a believer in the big-time throw to turnover-worthy play ratio, and he did not do bad at all. 2 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. So, I'm not going to shit on him for that. But he had 14 carries for 14 yards as well. It was just, there's nothing that's moving the needle. People are talking about this guy as a first-round pick. And it's like, does his offensive line suck? No. Does his weapons suck? No. And yeah, they had some drops. I mean, CJ Dupre could have been on this. He had 1 target and dropped it. But, we're talking about somebody who is going to be the leader of a multi-billion-dollar organization in a league that is 1,000 times harder. And it's like, for Milroe, I'm just begging him, dude, return. If you're getting first-round hype and you can end up being a late first pick to a team that's not the Steelers, I don't know what team would be a really good situation for you to sit. The Jets, I don't even think are a great team for you to sit at the moment based on all the bullshit drama that's going on. But if you could somehow find a way to be able to have that ideal situation, then do it. But it's like, just develop and be a better quarterback, man. I mean, simply put, I really want Jalen Milroe to succeed. I ended up having him quarterback 1 for a portion of the year after that Georgia game. But the placement is just as a thrower of the football, it is absolute ass. And it is unbelievable that people still say that, oh, he's a good thrower of the ball. No, he is not. Let's be real here. I want Jalen to be, but he is not a good thrower of the ball. The guy cannot. It feels like I'm watching, not Spencer Rattler, but Desmond Ridder again, where Desmond Ridder could not throw right on the face mask of a wide receiver that was standing still 5 yards away from him. It feels very similar with Jalen Milroe, to where 1 or 2 throws a game are actually on the money, and the rest have to be adjusted by the receiver. That's not going to fly in the NFL. That's a pass breakup. That's an interception. That gets your ass benched. And I don't want that for Jalen Milroe, because he's a talented guy with a good arm, with a good amount of work ethic, who's an unbelievable athlete. And you could try to work him like Lamar, but how many other times has that worked? I don't know many. And I really would prefer Jalen Milroe just to continue working on his mechanics, become better as a passer. Talking about Drew Allard last year, as coming into this year as someone who could not hit a moving target. And look at him now. Imagine that type of developmental curve for Jalen Milroe. He could be as damn good as what certain people believe him to be. And I really want that for him because I do not want to be talking about this guy as a bust. I fucking hate when really talented quarterbacks who are not polished come into the league and they end up being busts because they came out too early. Don't do it. Do yourself the favor. You're going to be still talented next year. I'd prefer for him to stay. Zy Alexander is next. 52 defensive grade, a defensive stop, 3 receptions allowed on 5 targets for 89 yards and a touchdown. I have him more based as a safety in the NFL because he's super duper smart with the zone IQ, really good length. I think that he's going to be perfectly fine. I'm not really too worried about him. Emry Jones continues to prove he's not built to be a tackle in the NFL. Not really in college either. 51 pass blocking grade, 5 pressures allowed. I mean, bottom line, I already start getting worried after 4 pressures allowed for any offensive tackle. But once you get 5 and especially 6 and beyond, I really start having issues. And Emry Jones has already had a 9 pressure allowed game this year. So Emry Jones, I don't know what happened. You guys know he's my number 1 offensive lineman coming into the year. But, I mean, he's pretty much guaranteed himself that he has to be a guard. And I don't know how many teams are super confident in that based on the fact that, well, he's not really doing too well as a tackle either. I do believe he ended up actually having a really good run blocking grade, so that might be a good indication that, you know, when he's not necessarily having to hold up a boundary of a pocket, he can end up succeeding as a blocker, and I'm praying to God that's the case. And that's why I still have some faith in him. But as a tackle, I've lost all faith. And then we got Aeneas Peebles ending this off. He had a 47 defensive grade and had 0 production, like literally 0 pressures, 0 stops, and super weird for a player who is extremely productive this year. So we got to dig into the tape and see exactly why that is. But that is going to be the long end to the video. This is the longest by a long shot I've ever had on a stock report. But there's just certain topics that needed to be discussed. I mean, simply put, there needed to be. But that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. Love you. See you at the far side. Peace.